The Galactic Council chamber was never quiet, but today it was louder than usual. Delegates from dozens of species filled the curved seats that rose in tiers around the central platform. Their voices, clicks, and harmonic tones blended into a constant hum of noise. At the center of it all stood Ambassador of the Collective. She was beautiful in the way her people always were. Her body was made of living crystal, pale blue, and catching the light in ways that made her seem to glow from within. When she spoke, her voice came out as music, each word a note that hung in the air. "I have called this session," she said, and the chamber slowly fell silent to discuss a debt. The other ambassadors shifted in their seats. Debts between species were serious matters. Wars had been fought over less. 3 weeks ago, continued, a reactor breach occurred on Station Helios 7. A human emergency responder named saved 17 members of our diplomatic delegation. He gave his life doing so. There were murmurs throughout the chamber. The ambassador, a massive figure covered in ceremonial armor, leaned forward with interest. The delegation, 3 identical beings who shared a single mind, tilted their heads in unison. "We wish to honor this human," said. "We wish to repay his family for their loss, but we have discovered something about humans that we do not understand." She paused, letting the silence build. "They have memorial funds." The chamber remained quiet. Most species had no idea what this meant. "When a human dies in service to others," explained, "other humans give money to support the family. Not the government, not the military, ordinary people, strangers who never met the one who died. They simply give what they can because they believe it is the right thing to do." The ambassador made a sound of confusion. "The state does not provide for fallen warriors." "Sometimes it does," said, "but that is not the point. The point is that the giving is voluntary. It comes from individuals who feel connected to someone they never knew simply because that person was brave." The spoke next, their 3 voices blending into one. "We do not understand. The hive provides for all. There is no need for individual contribution." "Humans are not a hive," replied. "They are billions of separate minds, and yet they choose to care for each other." She touched a control on the podium before her, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a man with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing the uniform of a station emergency responder. "This is," she said. "He was not a soldier. He was not specially trained for combat or crisis. He was simply a man who ran toward danger when others ran away." The image shifted, showing the interior of Station Helios 7. Alarms were flashing. Smoke filled the corridors. "When the reactor began to fail," narrated, "was off duty. He was eating dinner in the common area. He heard the alarms and immediately went to help." The hologram showed running through the station, directing frightened civilians toward the escape pods. "He found our delegation in the diplomatic quarters. The path to the escape pods was blocked by fire. He knew another route through the maintenance corridors. He led our people through." The image showed guiding a group of through narrow passages. The crystalline beings moved awkwardly in the tight spaces, but was patient, helping each one forward. "The radiation levels were rising," said. "Knew this. His suit was monitoring the exposure. He knew that every minute he stayed increased his chances of death." The chamber was completely silent now. "He got all 17 of our delegates to the escape pods, but then he realized one was missing. My aide, she was young, undergoing her first molt. She was too weak to move quickly and had fallen behind." The hologram showed stopping at the escape pod doors, looking back down the corridor. The other humans told him not to go back. The radiation was too high, but simply smiled and said, "She's scared. I'll be quick." The image showed, running back into the smoke and fire. He found collapsed in the corridor. He carried her in his arms, running through the toxic air. He made it to the escape pod just as the reactor containment failed. The hologram showed pushing a young into the pod, his movements slow and pained. He died 3 days later from radiation exposure. He was 34 years old. He left behind a wife and a daughter. Let the image fade. We wish to compensate his family, she said. We contacted the human authorities and asked what was appropriate. They told us about the memorial fund that had been established in his name. And then we learned that strangers, humans who had never met, were already giving money to support his family. She looked around the chamber, her crystalline face catching the light. We find this remarkable, we find this confusing, and we find this deeply moving. The ambassador spoke again. It is strange. Warriors should be honored by their people, yes, but the state should provide. That is the duty of leadership. Perhaps agreed. But there is something powerful in the choice. These humans are not ordered to give. They are not required by law. They simply see someone who was brave and they want to help. The stirred. This seems inefficient. Many small contributions when one large payment would suffice. Efficiency is not the point, said. Connection is the point. Each contribution is a message. It says, I see what you lost. I honor what your loved one did. You are not alone. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I have decided to contribute to this memorial fund, but I will not do so quietly. I am going to publish the fund's address on every communication network. I am going to tell our people what this human did for us, and I am going to invite them to give if they choose in the human way. There were murmurs of surprise throughout the chamber. Why? The ambassador asked. Your government could simply make a single large payment. Because I want our people to feel what I felt, said. When I learned about memorial funds, something changed in me. I realized that humans have built something precious. They have found a way to turn grief into connection. They have made it so that even death cannot break the bonds between strangers. She straightened, her crystalline form ringing with soft harmonics. A human saved our people. His people save each other. Perhaps we should learn from this. The session ended without any formal resolutions. The ambassadors returned to their delegations, each carrying something new to think about. 3 days later, a message went out across the communication networks. It told the story of. It explained what he had done and how he had died. It included the address of his memorial fund and an invitation to contribute. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of sent donations, each one accompanied by a message of gratitude and honor. The fund managers had to scramble to figure out how to convert currency into human money. But more importantly, other species noticed. They saw the messages and began asking questions. They monitored the traffic with growing fascination. Even the ancient, silent for 10,000 years, began to pay attention. Something was beginning to change. One human firefighter had died saving lives on a remote space station. And now, across the galaxy, strangers were learning to care about strangers. It was just the beginning. 3 months after this message spread across the networks, the Human Memorial Database noticed something strange. The database was run by a small nonprofit organization on Earth. They had been operating for decades, quietly coordinating memorial funds for fallen first responders, soldiers, and civilian heroes. Their staff numbered only 12 people, and they worked out of a modest office in Chicago. On a cold Tuesday morning, one of the technicians noticed an error in the donation logs. Contributions were appearing in currencies that did not exist in any Earth-based system. At first, he thought it was a glitch. Then he realized the amounts, when converted, were staggering. We have a problem, he told his supervisor. Or maybe a miracle, I'm not sure which. Within a week, the story was on every news network. Aliens were donating to human memorial funds. Not just though they had started it. They were contributing to the fund of. A species known for their isolationism, had given to the memorial fund of a human soldier who had died defending a mixed-species refugee camp. Even the mysterious, who had no formal diplomatic relations with humanity, had sent a contribution through anonymous channels. The donations came with messages. Some were formal and diplomatic, others were deeply personal. One message from a warrior read, "Fought without weapons. He won without killing. This is a kind of strength we are only beginning to understand." Another from a musician said, "In our culture we sing the names of our heroes. We will sing's name forever." A third from an anonymous source simply stated, "We did not know individuals could matter this much. We are learning." The memorial database staff did not know how to handle this. They were used to processing donations from humans, not from alien civilizations with completely different economic systems. They had to create new categories, new conversion tables, new ways of thanking donors who communicated through harmonics and scent markers. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, a research vessel encountered a derelict human cargo ship. The vessel had been drifting for weeks. Its crew was long dead, but its flight recorder told a story that would change the forever. The ship had hit an asteroid field during a routine cargo run. The damage was severe but not immediately fatal. The crew of 12 had enough power to either repair the engines or maintain a distress beacon. They chose the beacon. They knew that a passenger liner was 3 days behind them, on the same route. If that liner hit the asteroid field without warning, thousands would die. So the crew of the cargo ship broadcast warnings while their life support slowly failed. All 12 crew members died of oxygen deprivation. The passenger liner received their warnings and changed course. Not a single passenger was lost. They read the flight recorder over and over. They could not understand it. They were a hive mind species. Every individual was connected to the collective consciousness. When it died, the hive felt the loss, but the loss was shared. No single death could break the hive, and no single would ever choose to die for outsiders. But these humans had chosen exactly that. 12 individuals, cut off from their own kind, had decided that strangers mattered more than their own survival. They spent weeks debating what this meant. Their collective consciousness hummed with questions that had no answers. And then something unprecedented happened. A single drone, designated Unit 7749, made a personal donation to the memorial fund of the cargo ship's captain. The hive felt the transaction happen. They could have stopped it. They could have punished Unit 7749 for acting independently, but they did nothing. They were too confused to know what to do. On Earth, the donation appeared in the database as a single small contribution, converted awkwardly from work units. The message attached to it was brief. "I did not know one could choose. Now I am choosing." The database staff had no idea what it meant, but they added it to the records and sent a thank you message, as they did with every donation. Across the galaxy, they were experiencing their own transformation. They were warriors. Their entire culture was built around combat, honor, and glory in battle. They had formal systems for honoring fallen warriors, ceremonies that had remained unchanged for. But then they discovered that humans memorialized healers. Not warriors, not fighters, doctors, nurses, medical technicians. People who had never raised a weapon, who had sworn oaths to preserve life rather than take it. A battle fleet commander named Al became obsessed with this discovery. He spent hours reading about human medical workers who had died in service, a nurse who had worked until she collapsed during a pandemic, a doctor who had stayed in a war zone to treat civilians, a paramedic who had run into a burning building to reach trapped patients. These people had no glory, they had no weapons, they had no armor, and yet they had faced death as bravely as any champion. Al brought his findings to the Warrior Council. He expected to be dismissed, perhaps even mocked for wasting time on such matters. Instead, the council was silent for a long time. "We have a word," one of the elders finally said. For those who face death without weapons, we call them fools." "Perhaps," Al replied, "we need a new word." They created one. They called it unarmed valor, and they began contributing to human medical personnel memorial funds with the same fervor they would honor their greatest generals. Not everyone welcomed the changes. A massive Helix Consortium corporation saw an opportunity. The consortium was one of the largest commercial entities in known space, and its leadership decided that supporting human memorial funds would be excellent publicity. They announced a billion-credit contribution with great fanfare. Advertisements showed the consortium logo alongside images of human heroes. The company's stock price rose by 3%. And then something unexpected happened. The memorial funds rejected the money. Every single fund that the consortium had tried to donate to politely declined the contribution. The messages were courteous but firm. The funds did not want corporate money without corporate accountability. If the consortium wanted to help, they could improve their labor practices, provide better health care to their workers, and stop exploiting developing colonies. The consortium's CEO, a human named Victor Hayes, was furious. He went on public broadcast and demanded to know why his generosity was being rejected. "We're trying to help," he shouted. "We're offering real money to families who need it." The response came from a small woman named. She ran the memorial fund for her husband, a construction worker who had died saving colleagues from a collapsing building. "Mr. Hayes," she said calmly, "your company has made billions from unsafe working conditions. My husband died because your construction subsidiary cut corners on safety equipment. I don't want your money. I want you to make sure no one else dies the way my husband did." The interview went viral across human and alien networks. Hayes tried to salvage his reputation, but the damage was done. The consortium's stock price dropped by 8%. And somewhere, watching the whole spectacle, they began to move. No one had heard from them in 10,000 years. They were the oldest known species in the galaxy, survivors of countless civilizations that had risen and fallen. They observed but never interfered. Now they sent a message. It arrived at the Human Memorial Database as an anonymous donation. The amount, when converted, was the largest single contribution in human history, enough to fund every active memorial fund on Earth for the next century. The message contained only coordinates and a date. Someone was inviting humanity to a meeting. The coordinates led to a barren moon in unclaimed space. It orbited a dying star, far from any trade route or colonial interest. There was nothing special about it except for what was waiting there. Commander led the human delegation. She had been chosen because of her reputation for calm under pressure and her experience in diplomatic contact situations. She brought a team of 20, including scientists, translators, and security personnel. They expected to find one alien species waiting for them. Instead, they found 47. Ships of every design filled the space around the moon. Crystal vessels sang their arrival signals. Warships held formation with weapons powered down. Hive ships pulsed with shared consciousness. Even the reclusive had sent observers. And at the center of it all, ancient and unknowable, were the. No one had seen the in person for. Their appearance was somehow wrong, as if their bodies existed in dimensions that human eyes could not properly perceive. Looking at them too long made his head hurt. "Welcome," they spoke, and their words appeared directly in his mind. "We have been watching. We have been waiting. Now we are ready to show you what we have made." The delegations were brought to the surface of the moon. There, carved into the dark basalt, was a structure unlike anything had ever seen. It was a tower spiraling upward into the thin atmosphere. Its surface was covered in names, millions of names, each one glowing with soft bioluminescent light. The glow pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Every human who has died saving others, they explained. As far as we could research, as far back as our records extend. Stared at the tower, trying to comprehend its scale. First responders, soldiers, parents who shielded children, strangers who jumped into frozen rivers, workers who breathed toxic air to rescue colleagues, doctors who treated patients while sick themselves, ordinary people who did extraordinary things because someone needed help. The other species watched in silence, the stood at rigid attention, the hummed with harmonics of sorrow and reverence. Even they who struggled with individual significance were still. Why managed to ask? The moved in ways that hurt to watch. We have observed younger species for, they said. We have seen empires rise on conquest, on trade, on technological supremacy, on religious unity, on genetic manipulation. We have seen 1,000 different paths to civilization. They paused. We have never seen a species whose strangers mourn strangers, whose response to loss is not revenge or resignation but collective grief and collective support, where individuals who will never meet choose to share pain because they believe that shared pain is somehow lighter. The light from the tower pulsed gently. We do not understand this. We find it terrifying. We find it beautiful. We have decided to honor it. Walked toward the tower, drawn by something she could not name. The names glowed around her, millions of lives remembered. She read some of them as she passed. Husband, the crew of the cargo ship, hundreds of thousands of others. And then she stopped. One name glowed among the countless others. Tokyo, Japan, date of death, August 14, 2089. Grandmother. She had known her grandmother only from photographs and family stories. Grandmother had died in the Tokyo floods, along with thousands of others. The family never spoke of how she died. Now knew, according to the records etched into the tower, had carried 3 elderly neighbors to higher ground during the flooding. She had gone back for a 4th when the water took her. Stood frozen, staring at the name. Ambassador approached quietly, her crystalline form casting soft reflections on the dark stone. You did not know, she said. It was not a question. No, whispered, my family never told me. Perhaps they found the pain too great to speak of, or perhaps they thought the heroism was not remarkable, just something one does. Touched the glowing name. It was warm under her fingers. How long have you been watching us? She asked. Longer than your species has written history. We were watching when your ancestors first gathered around fires. We watched when the strongest chose to share food with the weakest. We watched when strangers died for strangers for the first time, and we have been watching ever since. On the far side of the monument, a commander was having his own revelation. He had found the name of a human medic who had died treating wounded during a border conflict. The medic had no reason to help. The Inhumans had been on opposite sides, but the medic had seen suffering and had chosen to end it. The commander stood before the name for a long time. Then he removed his ceremonial blade and placed it at the base of the monument. It was the highest honor it could give. The representatives moved slowly through the names. They had brought a recording device and they were speaking every name aloud, adding each one to the collective memory of the hive. It would take them years to finish. They did not care. One mind chose, the representative said, their 3 voices blending together. Then another, then another. We are beginning to understand. After hours of silent contemplation, the delegations gathered together for the formal ceremony. They spoke again. This monument belongs to no nation. It belongs to no species. It belongs to the dead and to those who remember them. They looked around at the gathered representatives. We invite each of you to build your own memorials, not copies of this one, your own interpretations, your own ways of honoring those who chose others over themselves. The response was immediate. Ambassador stepped forward. They will create a crystal of harmony tuned to sing the names of all species who have died in service to others. It will ring forever. The commander spoke next. We will build a hall of unarmed valor. It will stand at the heart of our military academy, so that every young warrior knows that courage takes many forms. The representatives pulsed with shared consciousness. We will designate a portion of our collective mind as a memorial chorus. We will sing the names of those who acted as individuals. We will remember what it means to choose. Even the Helix Consortium sent a message. Victor Hayes, humbled by his public embarrassment, had resigned. The new leadership was establishing a foundation for worker safety, properly funded and independently overseen. They asked if the memorial funds would accept their contributions now. The funds said they would consider it, but they would be watching. 2 weeks later, back on Earth, a small ceremony took place in the backyard of a modest house in Seattle. His daughter was turning 7. Her name was Lily, and she had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. The party was small, just family and close friends. Near the end of the celebration, a package arrived. It came in a diplomatic courier box, stamped with seals. Lily's mother opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a small object wrapped in protective cloth. The letter was from Ambassador. "Dear Lily," it read, "your father saved my life and the lives of many others. He was brave and kind and selfless. I never got to thank him, so I am thanking you instead. This crystal is a piece of my own body, freely given. It will sing your father's name in perfect harmony for the next 10,000 years. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you can hold it and know that your father is remembered. Not just by us, by strangers across the galaxy who never met him but who understand what he did. You are not alone in your grief. You never will be." Lily unwrapped the crystal carefully. It was pale blue and warm to the touch. As she held it, it began to hum softly, a single pure note that seemed to fill the air. She looked at her mother with wide eyes. "Why do the aliens care about Daddy?" she asked. Her mother did not have an answer. She had wondered the same thing herself, late at night when the grief was overwhelming. But somewhere across the stars, 47 species were still trying to figure out why humans cared about each other, why strangers wept for strangers, why a firefighter would run into fire for people he had never met. They were learning that heroism was not about strength or weapons or glory. It was about choice. The choice to help when you could walk away. The choice to suffer so others would not. The choice to say, with actions rather than words, that every life matters. And perhaps, in learning to honor human heroes, they were beginning to understand something even more important. That heroism has no species. That compassion has no borders. That the dead live on as long as someone remembers what they did and why they did it. On a barren moon, in the light of a dying star, millions of names glowed softly in the darkness. Each one a life, each one a choice, each one a gift from one stranger to another. And across the galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, strangers were learning to care about strangers who were nothing like them at all. It was just the beginning.